Will, this is a brilliant question, and thanks for sending this one in. Can I see Formula One pay more attention to teams and manufacturers, and is motor power more important than team power? Well, if you look at the fact that Formula One from next season, they're going to be introducing turbo engines, V6 engines, and also be looking to introduce more greener technologies to the sport. In that sense, yeah, you would say that motor power is more important than team power, and I think it's great that Formula One are looking to introduce greener technologies to the sport, but ultimately, it's a team that decides what engine they want to run, and also them, number of sponsors that they want to bring to the team. Obviously, they need to be aware of the financial situation, financial running of the team as well. So in that sense, I would put team power above motor power, and we've seen, for example, McLaren announced this week that they look set to use Honda engines for the 2015 season, and it was their decision. So I think for me personally, I would say that team power will always be more important than motor power, but the fact that Formula One will be introducing green technologies and V6 engines for next season, in that sense, I would put motor power above team power. My thoughts on the BBC showing only 9 live races and the rest of the races being shown as extended highlights. It's not a real surprise. The BBC are trying to make save as much money as they can, and that's the same for other companies. But the fact that they'll be showing free practice sessions for the live races anyway that they're showing, they'll be showing practice sessions on BBC Two. I actually think is a good move. So fair play to the BBC for doing that. But the fact that they're showing only 9 live races, it is frustrating when really Formula One should always be a free-to-air terrestrial sport, and they should be showing all 19 live races, but it's not to be. And I just briefly want to touch on Sky Sports F1. There were a lot of doubters, including myself, I have to admit, but I was impressed with the coverage that they provided last season. I thought they did a great job, and I look forward to seeing their coverage for this season. So I always enjoy watching the BBC and Sky, their F1 coverage, and I'll continue to watch both channels' coverage of the hopefully an exciting Formula One season this year. It's a big question, Lizzie. I would love to see Robert Kubica back in Formula One, as I'm sure the majority of us do. We know that he's going to be competing in the World Rally Championship, and that'll be good for him. Will he be back in Formula One? I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Although I know Kubica did an interview with a Motorsport magazine recently, saying that he believes he can still get back into Formula One, and I just would love to see him back in Formula One. I think he's got unfinished business, but it depends on whether he can get his hand movement, whether he can sort that out for him to then be able to drive a Formula One car. I think Kubica, losing him has been a massive blow for the sport, because I certainly think that he'd be right up there fighting for drivers' championships. And I'd love to see Kubica back in Formula One, but I'm not sure it's going to happen. Ravi, I am very excited looking ahead to the new Formula One season. Can't wait for the new season to start down in Australia. I think if 2012 is anything to go by, I think 2013 will be a great season for Formula One. And having looked at pre-season testing, there aren't any major conclusions that I could take anyway. But you have to say that the midfield team seems to have closed the gap between themselves and the big teams, the Red Bulls, the Ferraris and the McLarens. So it'll be interesting to see whether the midfield teams can make an impression in Formula One this season and get closer to the big teams. But overall, I'm looking forward to a fantastic season of Formula One. I think it's got the potential to be even better than 2012. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it, and I can't wait for the first race to get underway down under at Albert Park. So what next for Luiz Razia? Firstly, I feel so sorry for him through no fault of his own. He's now without a seat in Formula One, and obviously we know that one of his sponsors let him down, and because of that, Jules Bianchi's now got the seat at Marussia. As for Razia, he does deserve a seat in Formula One. He's performed really well in GP2 from what I've seen, and like I said, he deserves a seat in Formula One, and I hope he is on the Formula One grid next season, because he deserves to be there. What I will say for Razia, and one team that should consider taking him on as a reserve driver, is Force India. I think they benefit from having Razia as a reserve driver. He's young, he's quick, from what I've seen in GP2. And I definitely think he's got the talent to do well in Formula One. And the fact that now Jules Bianchi, who used to be Force India's reserve driver, now is at Marussia, and I actually wish Jules the best of luck for this season. I do think that Jules will do well at Marussia. As for Luiz Razia, I think I think he could consider going to Force India as a reserve driver. And I think he'd do a decent job there. So I think Luiz Razia, if he can stay within the Formula One circle, stay within the paddock in some capacity, and then find himself a race seat for next season, then great. But yeah, I do feel sorry for Luiz, and I wish him all the best in whatever he does next. So realistically, what can Mercedes achieve this season, and what are their targets? Well, consistency. Mercedes have got to be a lot more consistent this year. And for me, I thought that winning in China would be the kick that Mercedes needed, but they never really built on that. And apart from Nico Rosberg's win in China and Marcus Schumacher's third place in Valencia, apart from that, they didn't really have any other big great stories in that season. So for Mercedes, there's got to be a lot more consistent this year, and they definitely should be challenging for podiums. But from pre-season testing, you have to say that Mercedes have definitely improved the car from what we saw last season. But I will only decide on how well Mercedes will fare this season when I look at the first 3 or 4 races. If they can be in amongst the likes of the Lotus and the Ferraris, if they can at least finish, say for example, finish racing 4th or 5th position, and even challenging for podiums on a regular basis, then I think that will be a successful season for Mercedes. And now that they've got Lewis Hamilton on board, you know that Mercedes will be under pressure to give him and Nico a good car for them to challenge at the top end of the season. But all the signs from pre-season testing look positive, and I think Mercedes can have a good season. And I really hope they have a good season, and I really hope that they can challenge the big boys and challenge for podiums this season. So I guess for me personally, I think the target for Mercedes is to challenge for podiums, be more consistent, and to finish 4th in the constructors. So that's what I think Mercedes targets should be for this season. Do keep sending in your F1 questions to @baggies20 on Twitter, and I look forward to reading them. But for now, bye bye.